Hey guys, welcome to Unravel Me. I'm Anna, and today I thought it would be fun to take a look at several different types of left-leaning decreases. There's a surprising number of ways that this can be done, and they all look just a little bit different, some a little better than others, and I thought we'd kind of compare and contrast some of them, as well as I'll show you one of my favorites, which is pretty much the one that everybody does. So later this week we'll take a look at left-leaning increases, and then next week we'll focus on all the right-leaning increases and decreases. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the needles that we're using today are the Chiaogu red lace twist needles, I believe it's called. I'll link them below, but they're the ones I've had for years. My absolute favorite. I would recommend them without hesitation to everybody. You may still want some double pointed needles, but they're not necessary when you have these, and you could just have this one set and not need any other needles unless you have some extreme sizes that you need. The yarn is Red Heart Super Savory yarn, and this is in color Champagne. Okay, so for our very first left-leaning decrease, it can be abbreviated as SKP or PSSO. And basically what those stand for, PSSO would be pass slipped stitch over. The abbreviation for an SKP, slip one, knitwise, knit one, and then pass that slipped stitch over. So they're essentially the same thing. So what we're going to do is slip this stitch knitwise, knit this next stitch, and take that stitch that you just slipped, and we're going to pass that over the one that we just knit, just like that. You're going to slip that first stitch knitwise, then knit the second one. We're going to take that slipped stitch and bring it right on over that knit stitch. Okay, so we are at our next decrease. This one, we're just going to take these stitches as they are and knit them together through the back loop. So the way we do that is you're going to take your right needle, put it behind the two stitches, and knit them together through the back loop, just like that. That gives you a little bit more of a twist. You can see that line a little bit better right there. So very simple. All you do is stick that right hand needle into the back of the next two stitches and knit them together through those back loops there. The next one is one of my favorites, and it's just your basic left-leaning decrease, and that's called the SSK, which stands for slip slip knit. So let's just knit up to where we want to do that. And to do the slip slip knit, you're going to slip that stitch off your needle knitwise, slip the second stitch off your needle knitwise, and then you're going to bring that left needle into the front of those two stitches that you just slipped and knit them through the back loop. That you're going to slip one knitwise, slip that second stitch knitwise, and just knit them together through the back loop. So a lot of people don't really like that slip slip knit because it can tend to be a little bit looser and more obvious than the right leaning decrease, which is a knit two together, and so it cannot look quite as neat. So an improved way that's been discovered by, I want to say, Elizabeth Zimmerman to do that is sort of an improved slip-slip knit. You're going to slip that first stitch off the needle knitwise, but that second stitch you're going to slip off purlwise, and then knit those two together through the back loop. And there you have the improved slip-slip knit, where we're going to slip that first stitch knitwise, but then that second one we're going to slip purlwise, and you can actually even just bring the two together like that, because then you're going to knit them together through the back loop. Now this next left-leaning decrease came from Tech Knitting Blog, and it was again another way to try and find a solution for why the slip-slip knit tends to look a little loose sometimes. So let's get up to our decrease. So with this one, it's going to be pretty similar. You're going to slip that first stitch knitwise. Now the second stitch, you are going to yank it up and you're going to twist it. Put that left needle from right to left to twist that stitch. And then you're going to, just like the others, knit those through the back loop. And that twisted stitch is kind of hidden behind that first one that you slipped. Next one, we're going to slip that first stitch knitwise. That second stitch, you're going to tug up on it to pull out some of that extra slack. Put that left needle from right to left to twist that stitch. And then go ahead and slide that back onto the right needle. You're going to put that left needle into the front of both of those stitches so that you can knit them together through the back loop. And that really tightens that up there. So our next one that I'm going to show you is very similar to the last one, where you're going to be basically yanking up the slack in the yarn, because that's the reason why that slip-slip knit tends to look a little loose sometimes, is just because there's a little extra slack in the yarn. So this technique is by Wendy Peterson, and it's going to be very similar, again, where we slip that first stitch off the needle knitwise, slip that second one off the needle knitwise, knit those both through the back loop like normal, but then we're just going to let that first stitch drop off the needle there. You're going to pull up that slack on that back needle, and then you're actually going to pull that out by yanking on your working yarn. So you're basically pulling out the slack of that stitch. So just like the traditional slip-slip knit, you're going to slip that first stitch off the needle knitwise, slip that second stitch off the needle knitwise, put your left needle in the front of the two of them, and then knit them together through the back loop. Before you drop those stitches off your left needle, you're just going to drop the front stitch there, yank on that second one to pull up slack, and then yank on your working yarn, and that pulls out the slack in it. So let's finish up this row I'm going to purl back across, and we'll take a closer look at our left-leaning decreases. Okay, so I purled back and then knitted an extra row so we could get a real good look at these decreases here. I'll put a picture up too so you can see them a little bit better. So after seeing all of these, I think, to be quite honest, my favorite are Elizabeth Zimmerman's Improved Slip Slip Knit. And that's the one where instead of slipping that second stitch knitwise, we slip it purlwise and just knit them through the back loop together. That seems to give just a nice, tight, left-leaning decrease that looks very beautiful. I'm definitely not a fan of both of the ones where you end up yanking that second stitch. That could just be because I am unpracticed at it though. So if you were to practice that, you probably could get a very beautiful result. For me, it tends to pull on the stitches on either side of it, and then I get those bars between the stitches. The just straight twisting of the two stitches together does give a left-leaning decrease, but it's very, well, twisty kind of left-leaning decrease. So I could see using that as like, if you want kind of a decorative flair or you want that specific look. I would say my second favorite, surprisingly, because I never use it much, is that very first one we did, which was the passing the slip stitch over. It just gives a very definitive left-leaning decrease. And my third favorite was just the basic slip knit. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I really hope that that was useful in taking a look at some of the different options you have for left-leaning decreases. As a fun little bonus, I did want to show you just a couple more things. First, I wanted to show you how to do the left-leaning decreases on the purl side. There aren't nearly as many different options. There were even some that I didn't show you, but they're very similar and just variations of the tugging or slipping a different way. I think the ones that I showed you give you a pretty good idea of some of the best ones to go with. Again, experiment yourself and see, maybe you'll come up with something new that everyone will love. And so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do left-leaning decreases on the purl side. And there's just two different ways that I have to show you for that. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so we're over on the purl side now, and we want to do our left-leaning decrease. And the first way I'm going to show you, we're going to start by just purling that first stitch. Then we're going to actually slip it back onto our left needle with that yarn still in the back, that working yarn still in the back. You're going to grab that second stitch on the left there with your right needle, and you're going to slip it over that stitch that you just purled. And then slip that stitch back onto your right needle. So I'll show you one more time. You purl that first stitch, slip it back onto your left hand needle, grab the second stitch and slip it over that stitch that you just purled. Now from the back side here, it looks like it's going to the right, but once you're on the opposite side, it is left leaning. So now we can just slip that stitch back on over to the right needle. And lastly, for my favorite left leaning decrease on the purl side, it's just your classic one. You're actually going to come behind these two stitches. The point of your right needle is going to be purling the two stitches from the back loop. So let me move the working yarn out of the way so you can see this a little better. Over on the right side of the work here, you're going to put that needle tip in from right to left. It seems very anti-intuitive. So a nice way to do this is you can bring that right needle between those two stitches and then kind of twist it so that you can get into the front leg of those two stitches, and it's going to twist them. So now you're in between those two front legs and you're just going to purl those together. And that's purling two together through the back loop. And that gives you a really good looking left leaning decrease on the right side of the fabric. That's very comparable in the opposite way to knit two together. So let me just work back and I will show that to you one more time. Okay, so one last time, let's take a look at how we do that. We're going to have our working yarn in front, of course, because we're purling, and we are going to purl these two stitches together through the back loop. So easiest way to get into the back loop of both of them is just bring that right needle around. You're going to kind of slide it in between the two a little bit and then lift it just enough to try and slide into those front legs of those two stitches. Once you practice a bit and kind of get the hang of it, it becomes a lot easier. And then you're going to knit them together. And that's it. So I'm going to knit across the front and then let's take a look at how they look. Alright, so here they are on the front. As you can see, the left leaning decrease where you purl it and then slip the stitch over is a bit more obvious. So if you want that to be part of the design of your work, it can be a really beautiful way to do a left leaning decrease. And the left leaning where we knit the two together through the back loop is this one right here. And it just blends almost seamlessly in with the fabric. It's really beautiful. It looks almost the same as the right leaning decrease. So if you have decreases coming in from either end and you want one that's right leaning and one that's left leaning, it's a really good looking one for that. The only thing is it is done on the purl side, but when you do need to do decreases on the purl side, this is my go-to right here, just because of how nice and seamless it looks. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that was very useful to you. I hope you got to kind of see which ones you prefer to do and that you learned something here. If you have any questions, please just let me know in the comments. I would love you to subscribe, like the video, and let me know what you want to see next. Mwah!